what I try and do as coaching is get underneath the how do I speak in this meeting to what's the story that you're telling yourself and how can we change that story?
Hello and welcome to Storytelling for Business, the podcast that helps you connect with your clients, prospects and teams. How? Well, the clue is in the series title. The podcast does what it says on the tin. I'm investigating how you can harness the power of storytelling for business to build relationships that last and boost your brand in the process. Just quickly, if you're not British, you might understand why I just said it does what it says on the tin. It's from a commercial campaign created 30 years ago for a company called Ronseal, who made stuff that you paint on your garden fence so it doesn't go rotten. Anyway, we say that a lot in the UK. If something does what it says on the tin, it is what it claims to be. And this podcast is going to get you storytelling like a pro. I promise. The reason I know the answer to that is because the storytelling experts I'm interviewing know what works, and they're sharing their tips and tricks with us. And we're also meeting regular business owners too, inspiring people who've all got great stories to tell. And today's guest is one of those. Helen O'Grady is a former nurse from the world-famous children's hospital, Great Ormond Street in London. She became an expert in the field of metabolic disorders, treating children with really complex and rare conditions. She continued her nursing career in Australia, becoming clinical nurse consultant for statewide metabolic services and rare genetic skin disorders in New South Wales, covering an area just 300,000 square miles. But over time, Helen realised she wanted to support the healthcare professionals she was working alongside. And she's now a master executive coach for healthcare professionals, clocking up thousands of hours as a coach and over 7 years as a coach supervisor. But everyone's story has a few twists and turns. And for Helen, the COVID pandemic took her back to the hospital wards she thought she'd left behind. So much to talk about. So let's dive in. Helen O'Grady, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. It's lovely to be here. I'm a bit overwhelmed by the introduction.
It's all you.
It's all me. I know.
Well, let's start kind of at the beginning. Why did you become a nurse? It isn't an easy job.
No, I suppose it's not an easy job, but I was drawn to it. It took me a little while. So I was in my early 20s by the time I knew. And I guess I was very specific in that I knew I wanted to be a children's nurse. And in the UK, you can train that way and do that from the beginning, which is what I did through Great Ormond Street. And I guess I liked kids. I liked helping. And I was very lucky from the moment I started the training. I was like, yeah, this is for me. And I don't regret it. It was a fabulous career. In some aspects I still miss, lots I don't. But I feel very passionate about nursing and about children's nursing and feel very grateful for the career I had in it.
How long were you at Great Ormond Street for?
I was probably at Great Ormond Street for about just under 5 years, and then moved to, again, another specialist service that was run out of King's College Hospital for paediatric liver disease. And then we moved to Australia, and then I worked at the children's hospitals in Sydney for another 6-7 years.
I mean, you're a mum now. You kind of weren't then, or certainly not at the beginning. I wonder whether that those two things are problematic.
Yeah, I think it depends. I think they are. I think most children's nurses would say things shift when you have your own kids. For me, that definitely was a shifting point. As you know, I also had 3 kids in less than 3 years, so it wasn't just having the kids; it was the number I had in quite a short period of time.
That is a lot of children in a very
it's a
short
lot of children in a
time.
short space of time. And at this time, one of the things about metabolic disorders is quite a few of them are life limiting. So you're supporting children who are dying and families at that stage. And so that did become hard in terms of my flexibility. It's very hard to say to a family whose child is dying, I'm really sorry, I need to go and pick up my healthy children from childcare because there's no flexibility. So that definitely was the point when I started moving to kind of leadership development and found coaching and moved in that direction away from clinical work.
So just before we go into that sort of phase, I'm interested to know what qualities you think a person needs to work with kids who are as sick as the kids that you were looking after for a really long period of time as well.
And I think one of the things about children's nursing is actually it's your relationship with the parents that's almost, obviously you need to enjoy kids and be able to create relationship and have fun with them. But it's really the parents you're supporting because they're the ones who are caring for their child rather than us directly. I mean, we did do some direct work, but mostly you're teaching and supporting parents how to look after their sick child. So I think the qualities you need is, fairly obvious in some ways in terms of kindness, empathy, wanting to make a difference. But probably the two things I think are critical when you're working with such sick children is ability to stay calm and your ability to self-regulate, so to manage your own emotions, because you just have to sit with other people's emotions and you can't make it better. And so you need to be able to have that ability to look after yourself and yeah, like I say, self-regulate your own emotions, as well as see the lightness. So as well as being able to kind of find humor when there isn't much humor, and kind of take and have gratitude in the little things. I used to always say the great thing about doing that kind of nursing is just making somebody a cup of tea makes a difference. It's the really small stuff that makes a difference. And so I think having the ability to see that also helps.
I think that's really interesting. And let's just kind of remember those qualities. I mean, that self-regulation part, that's really, I should think most people who work in healthcare or caring professions, but also anywhere where there's human contact. Maybe it's every job.
Yeah.
Like you said, you can't fix it. You can just be there to support them. And I'm a fixer.
Yes.
I want to make everything better. There's been issues in my life with my family, and I just want to take it all away from that person and make that person not have to suffer anymore. And of course, you can't do that. And certainly not in a role that you just described. Okay, we'll park those thoughts. And can I add resilience in there as well?
I guess I slightly avoid the word resilience. I think resilience is sometimes used kind of against healthcare professionals.
Is it?
And often in workplaces, I would say. I work with a lot of people now as a coach and a coach supervisor where it's what resilience is kind of being used for. You should just cope with whatever pressure is coming against you. If you're in a toxic workplace, if you're resilient, you can cope. If you just keep showing up to work, you're resilient. So I think the proper definition, which is being able to bounce back from hardship, is an important category and important quality for all of us to have, but as you say, healthcare professionals particularly. But I think it is misused to say you just need to keep coping, whatever is thrown at you. And that I think is quite an unhelpful story. If we're talking about stories, it's an unhelpful story in the workplace. It's culturally an unhelpful one. And I think it's an extremely unhelpful one for us as individuals to say, and if I was just more resilient, I would cope with this, or I need to be more resilient.
Love that. Okay, I stand corrected. So it's kind of resilience on one side and burnout on the other.
Yes, exactly. And I think that line is getting so blurred for people, and people feeling like they need to be resilient actually is pushing more and more burnout.
Okay. So coaching. So I can see a lot of crossover, but I mean, you were telling me before, and I'd really love to explore this, how you've done all this massive amounts of work in coaching and supporting people and helping people kind of deal with burnout or deal with avoiding burnout or figuring it all out. But you said that you didn't see that. You weren't necessarily joining up the past with the present. And I'm really interested to explore that. That wasn't a question, but
yeah,
if there's some way you can respond.
I can go in there. I for a long time, I kind of saw my careers quite separately. I was a pediatric nurse, then I was a coach, and I didn't connect the dots at all. And it's only really in the last couple of years, the last 5 years maybe, that I've kind of seen actually a lot of the attributes that I had as a nurse and, that made me a good nurse actually make me a good coach. But I think there is such a discrepancy. Everybody knows what a pediatric nurse is. You get a lot of external validation and, wow, I couldn't do that. And you're amazing and that kind of stuff. As a coach, people kind of look at you and go, oh, what's that? That sounds a bit dodgy, kind of life coaching. Do you know what I mean? You just don't get that. So I was almost a little bit embarrassed about leaving something that felt very tangible to something that wasn't tangible at all. And the difference, I guess, one of the reasons I was a good nurse was I was good at solving people's problems. Yes, you couldn't take the emotion away, but I was a bit of a fixer and I was good at that. And then when we move into coaching, we do the opposite. We're not responsible for whether somebody is okay or not. We don't have to fix their problems. We support them to find ways for themselves. So I loved that shift. For me, that was like, oh, my shoulder's dropping and I'm not responsible for people anymore. But I couldn't see the correlation. Whereas now I have realized, actually, yeah, I did sit with not fixing and just being with people's emotions. And that actually has helped me a lot in my coaching career. And I think I've become more comfortable with that.
So fascinating, really fascinating. So you started off coaching, like being a coach. So working with purely people in healthcare, because that was the area you knew?
Yeah, so I first got into it when I was soon after having actually 2 of my kids. I was supporting a leadership program in the Children's Hospital where I would previously been working clinically, and coaching was part of that. So that was my first introduction to coaching. And as soon as I was learnt about coaching, then went and was coaching people and kind of obviously started increasing my skills and my knowledge. I was like, I love this. And so sort of over time, it took quite a while and I went backwards and forwards between clinical roles and coaching. But it very much started in healthcare. And then when I became an independent coach, most of my work was in healthcare in Australia, because that's where my contacts were. And then when we sort of slightly unexpectedly moved to the UK from Australia 7 years ago, and I kind of had to restart my coaching business from scratch, really, in the UK. Again, I had some links in healthcare, but not many, but sort of expanded out into social care and education. And so similar spaces. And the reality with coaching is you can coach anybody. The skills are the same. But as you would know, storytelling, connecting to people feel more connected and in a way trust you quicker if they feel like you understand their world.
You get them.
Yeah. And though that is not remotely essential either as a coach or a coach supervisor, it is what people seem to look for, particularly if they don't understand coaching.
And I think that's actually the same with marketing, right? You need to understand them, and they need to think that you get them, and you need to be telling stories that they would be telling themselves.
Yes.
So are you able to, I mean, obviously everything's confidential and all of that. I'm not asking for
That's okay.
names and phone numbers, but can you share an example or a couple of examples of like specific situations where somebody's come to you and had this issue? Because I think, I know we're talking about healthcare, but I think that there's a lot of relevance in here for anybody who's in a leadership role, or even who's a parent, to be honest.
Yep.
Helping people to figure out on their own whatever issue it is. So are you able to give us any examples?
Yeah, I can probably give you a couple of examples because themes are quite common. I mean, the most common thing that I work with people around is self-belief and confidence and the inner critic. And that's whether I'm working directly with coaches because I supervise coaches. So often that's a narrative around, am I a good enough coach? Would somebody else have done it better? What did I do wrong? Why has that client disappeared on me? That kind of stuff. And in leadership, again, I can't speak up at this meeting. I don't know how to performance manage this person. I'm struggling with, I work with quite a lot of social workers. I'm struggling with the families I'm working with because I'm intimidated by them, or I'm young and they're much older and I don't have children and they have children. And so that's very, very common. And often that is around the stories we tell ourselves. Mm-hmm. So, I often describe our protective voices that say, are you sure? You shouldn't be doing that. You're not good enough. That voice gets very loud. The voice that we tend not to use, that we use with other people is, you've got this. Hang on, you know what you're talking about. You've got lots of experience. You're doing your best.
Yeah.
We're not comparing to somebody else. So like, for example, a junior doctor saying, I don't know what to do in this situation. We all have that. But actually internally we go, without even realizing, I should be doing this.
No.
I should
that word
know.
Should. Isn't that dangerous?
Yeah. I talk about, and that's what I'm often doing in coaching, is picking up people's language where they're not even hearing how they speak to themselves, which is, I should be doing this. I can't do it. I don't know that kind of stuff. I don't know whether that's a specific enough example, but I think that's brilliant. So common across everybody. And what I try and do as coaching is get underneath how do I speak in this meeting to what's the story that you're telling yourself and how can we change that story? So you might have a story that is, for example, I never get job interviews. I'm never successful. Okay, well, I've not been successful up until now. It's just that tiny shift. What does that do to you? What does that allow if you just hold that possibility and you intentionally play that story in your head before you go into an interview, as opposed to, I never get interviews. I'm never successful at interviews. So it sounds very subtle, but actually it's incredibly important and incredibly powerful, and the shifts that can happen once we start paying attention to the stories that we're telling ourselves, I truly believe in.
That self-talk, it's so powerful. I can't remember if I've said this on the podcast before, but there was somebody, I came across this. Somebody was describing Daley Thompson giving an interview. It was when the last Olympics were, and they were kind of interviewing famous Olympians. And Daley Thompson was a famous British athlete. And he did, pentathlon, heptathlon, one of the things where you have to do all the different things. And she said knowledgeably. And it came down to the last thing, and he had to do a throw. And I don't know whether it was a shot put or a javelin or a whatever. I'm telling this story so well. But anyway, it came down to the last thing as to whether he was going to get gold or silver or get onto the medal table or not. And you get 3 throws. And he bodged up 2 of them. And it all came down to this last throw. And the person interviewing him said to him, if that was me, I'd have just thought, well, I always mess it up, right? Or I've lost it now. So I'm not having a good day, or it's just not my time, or whatever. All those things that we say to ourselves. And the interviewer said to him, "So what did you say to yourself?" Because spoiler alert, it has a happy ending, the story. And he said, "Well, I've done 2 bad throws, and I've never had 3 bad throws in a row." So he switched it completely on its head, and then he did a brilliant throw, and then he won the medal, or whatever the happy ending needs to be of this very poorly remembered story. But the point is, just that little internal mental switch from the negative to the positive can make a massive difference. It can make a medal-winning difference.
Yeah. And it's so applicable, and it doesn't even always need to be positive. It's just about possibility. And that's where coaching and actually having a conversation with somebody or a friend, because we're not that good at catching our own stories, but having to say it out loud, it's suddenly like, oh yeah, I am speaking to myself and in this way. And one of the questions I quite often ask people is, if you were being kind as you are to your friends, what would you say to yourself? And it's amazing how it's like, oh God, I definitely wouldn't speak to a friend like this. And it's like, what makes you so special and that you get to speak to yourself like that? And how does it help you? You know, and that's the thing. It's about, how is it helping you at the moment? It's and things aren't as black and white. There's probably elements of truth in all of it, but it's like, what's the most helpful thing that I can say to myself in order to achieve or get whatever it is that I want to get in the moment?
Is it, this is a bit off the wall, but is it gendered, do you think? The reason I'm asking this is because I was reading something and somebody said, oh, all the people I speak to, this is somebody in a management role, but sort of a bit of a coaching role as well. And they said, so often they say, this is going to sound stupid, but, I know I'm being stupid, but, and then this coach was saying, first of all, what then follows the but is never stupid. And secondly, it's usually women who say that. And men say, tell me if this is stupid. Which is same feeling, but ever so slightly different. So have you come across a gendered difference in the way that people do this self-talk?
That's a really interesting distinction that now I'm going to be paying attention for that. No, I think in the spaces that I work, probably about 70% of my clients are women. I think what is different is sometimes, not always, this is a bit of a gross generalization, men find it a little bit harder or aren't as used to talking about what's going on for them. And so sometimes it just takes a little bit longer to get to what their self-talk is. Whereas, again, women tend to be more open or more used to, because they might have talked to their friends or somebody else about kind of what's going on. But actually that self-confidence, that self-belief, the inner critic, I'm not sure that it's as gendered as we think it is. I think there probably is, and there would be some research out there. There probably are differences, but in the work that I do, it might sound a little bit different, but the essence of it is often the same.
Thank you. That's interesting. Okay, let's talk about small business. Running a small business. And particularly, not everybody who runs a small business is the thing that they are, is the service or is the product. People run a small business and they provide X. However, your business and actually my business, we are the product and the service and the doer of the business. We wear all the hats.
Absolutely.
And people want to work with me because of who I am. And because of all the skills I have and my history and all of that, the things I bring to the party. And people, I guess, want to work with you. We did touch on this before about your experience in their sector, because people want to work with you because of your healthcare background, but kind of because you're you.
Yeah.
So how do you bat away all of that kind of that sort of imposter syndrome and blah blah blah, all the awful things that we all have. And how do you sell yourself, and have you had to reframe that as an idea of, whoa, I'll have to now sell myself?
Yeah, I've really struggled with it. And, I had a business in Australia and I was lucky there. I had built up a network and I never really had to sell myself, if I'm honest. And then came over here and kind of started again and again.
It's a big reset.
It was a
massive
really,
reset.
really big reset. And it was always sort of on my to-do list, must get better at marketing, must market myself. And then kind of about 18 months ago, a big drop in public sector spending on things like coaching. And so I was like, I really need to start marketing myself. So I have been focused on it over the last year and I've really struggled with it because that notion of selling myself is just so alien, particularly from that background of nursing where it's like, you don't sell yourself, your worth is what it is, not particularly high, all of that kind of stuff. But
you're a cog in the machine when you're a nurse,
exactly.
aren't you? And you are the flipping machine
exactly.
when you're running your own business. Yeah.
But like you, as you say, I am aware that people will buy when they know, like, and trust you. And the stories and being visible, they're never going to know you unless you're visible. So that first question is, how do you become visible? And that's kind of putting yourself out there. There's no getting away from it. And then that marketing, which I'm not sure whether that's the same in your area, but that notion around kind of having an ideal client and directly speaking the marketing to that particular person. And that notion I found really hard. Like I was saying, well, I can coach anybody and I certainly can supervise any coach. So niching my marketing to get my voice heard, I found quite hard just with that mental mindset. So again, those stories that I was telling myself of, yeah, but I can coach anybody, or I'm different, and so I've had to sort of get over that and go, okay, well, my marketing is one thing that's very narrow and limiting. That doesn't mean actually the work that I do is narrow and limiting. I will work with anybody and they're more likely to hear me. I've lost the question that you asked.
That's okay. I was just thinking, because a lot of work, people always say to me, what have I heard you on? And chances are they haven't heard me on anything, because a lot of work I do is internal corporate messaging, internal comms for staff, or things that are for pitches that never go out in the world on TV. And I guess for you, everything you do is behind closed doors. It's all in somebody's head, essentially. So for me, it's kind of social proof. Occasionally I can share pieces of work that I've done if they aren't made public, but testimonials, things like that are super helpful, because so I have a real sort of basic practical thing that I do. I have a Google business profile, and people can leave me a star rating and a review, and then that ports automatically onto my website. So Google sees it if people search for me on the internet, and they're also on my website, so they update and all of that. It's just kind of like a step, but it does mean that people can read about me without me going on how brilliant I am.
Yeah. And I think to me, it relates to what you were saying earlier is, which I've slightly lost now, but, being on LinkedIn, the stories, that
you're posting on LinkedIn every day, pretty much, aren't you?
Because that's where coaches are. So again, whereas I don't do kind of Google, most coaches wouldn't particularly search on Google for somebody. It would either be a recommendation or they've seen them on LinkedIn. And what I'm trying to do there, as you said, is say my experience, and it is my experience because I feel really strongly and passionately about authentic, genuine marketing. So it's not, this is somebody else's story that I'm saying is mine, but I actually over time know that my experience is mirrored by others. And so actually sharing kind of what I've gone through a bit, what's going on in my head. And as you say, not necessarily talking about clients of mine, but sometimes doing that, where then when people are reading it going, Oh yeah, that's what I think. And sometimes you get that. It's like you're in my head, Helen. This totally resonates. And so that's how you build that trust and that of, actually I can connect to this person. They get me. And that increases the likelihood that they might reach out and say, can I work with you? But it's hard. It's relentless. I struggle with it. But it's necessary. If we're going to run a business, we have to be visible to the people who may buy our services. It's as simple as that.
So tell us exactly, this is your, you can do your elevator pitch. Tell us exactly what being a master, you've got so many qualifications. What being, is it master executive coach?
Yeah. So I guess that bit I tend not to sell so much as my coach supervision work. Okay. And the reason why, I'm happy to coach anybody, but a lot of people that I coach are in healthcare, social care, education. And to be honest, they're not ideal clients because they don't have the money to invest in their own coaching. So the coaching I do for them tends to be organizational sponsored. So that means going for tenders and asking the organization if they're willing to pay. So it's a slightly different type of marketing, which is soul destroying in a different way. Whereas the coaches I work with are supporting them to be the best coach that they can be. So being an extremely experienced coach is almost a prerequisite to be able to supervise other people as coaches. So I also have a lot of, as you were saying at the beginning, kind of 7 years, I'm an accredited master supervisor as well. So that is around my depth of experience and knowledge in the coaching space and supporting other coaches, because I feel really passionately about that, to be professional, because there's actually no definition really of professional in coaching. It's not like nursing that's regulated and it's very, very clear cut. There are different coaching bodies who will accredit and try to be professional, but that means slightly different things to different people. And so I really want to support coaches to feel passionately about their coaching, to be continuing to develop, and that we have a responsibility to, I'm going to say, protect the clients who come to coaching, because anybody can call themselves a life coach or a leadership coach with no qualifications, no experience, and do things that I wouldn't consider to be coaching, as in telling people what to do, selling them stuff, all kinds of things, without really supporting their own development and thinking about, how do I do this in the best way?
Okay, lovely, beautiful answer. Thank you for explaining. I want to talk about a pivot, because I know it wasn't a massive period of time, but it was pretty massive. So you came back from Australia, you had to find a house and sort out, education for your family and all of the stuff that relocating from the other side of the world brings. And you were setting up again, starting your business. And then there was a global pandemic. And you could have said, no, that's, I don't do that anymore. I'm not a nurse anymore. But instead, you went back to the wards. I mean, flipping heck, Helen, tell us about that.
Yeah, and initially I went back to the wards in my local hospital, kind of literally as a healthcare assistant, so not really as a nurse, but it was sort of in that lull where that first summer where actually things got a little bit better for a little while before it got really bad. And then I did go back to kind of the specialised children's nursing I'd done before at Evelina Children's Hospital in London. And then things got a little bit complicated again, and obviously we got that second winter where things got really, really bad. And so initially I wasn't on the wards, I was doing the specialist nursing that I had done both in Australia and in the UK. And then because things got really bad, I did have to go onto the wards and onto adult intensive care, which was completely terrifying, if I'm honest, and so outside my comfort zone. I hadn't been a clinical nurse for quite a long time, and then suddenly to be working with adults. I'd never worked in intensive care. All of us were learning as we went. So it was an interesting time. I initially went back because I was like, oh, well, the coaching isn't really taking off. And actually, I do miss being a nurse. I guess that was still that point where I saw them quite separately. And so that was kind of my motivation to, we'll see what you think. But it was so difficult. I took a 12-month contract. And at the end of that 12 months, I was like, no, actually, I really think I can say goodbye comfortably now to that stage of my professional career and really focus. The coaching had started to pick up then. And actually at that point, I was coaching and supporting a lot of healthcare professionals who were really struggling during the pandemic. And so felt like I was making more of a difference there than I was in the clinical space.
But I guess having lived that, you said it was terrifying, having been in intensive care, seeing those desperate times and working with a whole group of patients you'd never worked with before, adults, so poorly, and it was chaotic, wasn't it, that time?
Oh, it was incredibly chaotic. You literally would go into work not knowing where you were at, the numbers, the bed numbers were going. We were creating new wards in the children's hospital to accommodate the adults and then closing them down when things got better. It was really, really chaotic. And, it's well documented, the PPE challenges, what was required, who needed to isolate when you were testing, all sorts of stuff was just changing on a day by day, hour by hour basis.
It does feel like some kind of weird dream.
Yes.
Now.
Yeah.
For somebody who observed it, rather than somebody who literally lived it as you did. I can't believe we did all those things.
Yeah.
And we came out the other side, but the scars are there forever, aren't they?
Yeah, for sure. It's changed, and it's particularly changed healthcare. It will never go back to how it was. And so that was an interesting time coaching, and I still do, but during those couple of years, particularly post the intensity, talking to a lot of healthcare professionals about grief and grief for not being able to work in the way that they had been pre-pandemic. So particularly primary care I was working in, so GPs, practice nurses, receptionists, all of those kind of staff, because having to completely move away from, we used to be able to do it like this and now we can't. And that's hard because it happened very, very quickly it was very chaotic. And that, again, where that resilience, I think, was very tricky for people. You've just got to keep going. But then suddenly we're 3 years in. I still just have to keep going like this. There's a limit.
How much keeping on going is needed here.
Exactly. So, but that experience of going back did again give me credibility, helped me build trust with other people who were going through a lot worse than I went through, to be fair, because they were there for the long time. I was, as you said, just it feels like a bit of a dream.
Okay, so I'm going to bring this back to, we're nearly running out of time, but I'm going to bring this back to the thing we talked about right at the beginning. What qualities make a good nurse? And I'm interested to know if you think that those qualities make a great coach or coach supervisor as well. What I'm kind of getting at is what's within you what makes you good at these kind of twin careers, or is there a difference, or is it to do with growth, or what? What do you think?
I think it's all of the above. I don't think it's as binary as that, but definitely that quality of sitting with uncertainty and sitting with discomfort in others and supporting people with difficult emotions and not feeling like you have to make it better. That is very important. Being calm, taking people as they are all qualities that directly come from the are beneficial in both professions, I would say. I think what's different is, and what I had to let go of, and most people moving into coaching, kind of irrespective generally of where they've come from, is our desire to fix and to rescue people and to make things better for people. And that's a human tendency, and that's a really nice thing. But actually in coaching and in coach supervision, we need to step away from that and really trust people to do that for themselves and accept it if they choose not to do it for themselves. And that's okay as well. Whereas, again, previously we may get frustrated with, but why aren't they doing that? We can see what they need to do. I don't understand that. And that's parenting, isn't it? Again, parenting teenagers like you. I've got, 3 teenagers, and stepping back, letting them make their own mistakes and kind of just being there, not wanting to rescue them. I think these are life skills. And for a lot of us, it's challenging, but actually it makes a big difference to our relationships if we don't feel like we've got to rescue people from whatever they're experiencing.
And you can learn those lessons as a teenager, brilliant. But it's never too late to have coaching, right? You can learn those lessons as an adult. You can learn the lessons for your whole life.
Yeah, and it's we can self-coach and we can learn those lessons for ourselves. But generally, it is easier with somebody else, because somebody else. When I meet somebody for the first time and talk about my coaching, and it's a bit the same in supervision, I describe myself as your cheerleader. It's like, yeah, you've got this, but with a velvet boot. And what I mean by that is kicking you gently to go further than you'll go on your own. And I think that's what coaching does, is it helps us unpick what's going on, and we go quicker and further than we might go on our own, because we've got somebody challenging us, helping us see the patterns, the language, the way that we're talking to ourselves. That's really hard for us to do on our own.
Love it. Love it. Well, if you'd like to work with Helen wearing her velvet boot, the best way to connect with you, Helen, how can people find you?
Yeah, LinkedIn is the best way. Helen O'Grady. If you put Helen O'Grady coach in, you will find me. We can put that link in the podcast notes, which has kind of got my contact details. That's got a book a call with me button as well. So that's definitely the best way to get in touch. And I love just connecting. Follow me on LinkedIn, see what you think, engage with what I'm saying. But would love to chat to anybody.
Excellent. Okay, well, we've got to the last question. Can't believe it. It's whizzed by. The last question that I always ask people is, what does your story look like for the next 5 years?
That's a great question. I think what I like about my life now is I don't know. I hope it looks like more coach supervision, more coaching, more mental coaching, a successful business. But success means all sorts of things. I guess what I hope it involves is, contentment, just being happy and enjoying whatever it throws up. I guess that either that's age or wisdom or whatever, that actually that certainty I don't quite need in the same way that I needed when I was younger, or that realization that I can pretend I'll have that certainty. And actually we don't. All that's certain, hopefully, is that tomorrow will come, and enjoying that. So that's what I hope the next 5 years is, enjoying whatever comes and making the most of that.
What a beautiful answer. Lovely. Lovely. Well, that's it. That's it.
We've come to the end. Time flies when you're having fun, Katie.
Doesn't it just? Well, Helen O'Grady, thank you so much for being on the podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Likewise. Thanks for having me, Katie. Take care.
Oh, wasn't that a fascinating conversation and so relatable? Here are today's key takeaways. 1. Beware of the word resilience. Helen said it's an unhelpful story in the workplace. She reminded us that the true definition of resilience is being able to bounce back from hardship. And of course, that's incredibly useful. But she said that in the world of work, the word is culturally unhelpful because it suggests that if we're struggling, we just need a bit more resilience in order to keep coping, when in fact, there's a risk that we could be heading towards burnout. 2. If you're selling a service as a small business owner where you are very much the thing people are buying or buying into, you need to get very clear on your own story. Helen talked about the learning process she went through of joining the dots between her former career and her current one, and really noticing where the one informed the other. How has your career path shaped who you are today? What's your story? 3. What unhelpful stories are you telling yourself? Try to notice when your inner critic says you should be doing something. I loved how Helen described her work as a coach, helping people with self-belief and confidence. She said that rather than addressing a person's performance anxiety, for example, should I speak at this meeting, she gets underneath that to the real issue, which is noticing what's the story you're telling yourself, and then asking, how can we change that story? Oof, wasn't that terrific? A massive thanks to Helen O'Grady for sharing her story with us. And if you want to hear more from her, she's actually got her own podcast series coming out really soon in June 2025 through the Association of Coaching. It's called Coaching Supervision Uncovered. We'll put a link in the show notes to that, as well as to Helen's LinkedIn profile. Go check her out. Okay, coming up next time, it's me from the future. Yes. Next week, it is the Toolkit episode, and that means I'll be bringing together the main themes we've encountered across all of this season's interviews. You're going to hear from all my brilliant guests again, so we can admire their best bits together. And as usual, I'll be parcelling it up for you with a handy acronym to help you remember the lessons they shared. It's quite a lot of work, so I better get on with it. Back now to previous me. See, this series is the gift that just keeps on giving, you lucky listener. And I really appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for your company. Now it's time to go. I'm Katie Flamman, and this is Storytelling for Business. Till next time, goodbye.